Welcome to another episode of the Best Day Ever podcast. This is your host, Tru Sav, joining you on another sunny day here in Oakland, California. So, for today's episode, now that we know who I am and what I'm about and all that fun stuff, we are going to first I'm going to tell you about what has been going on recently in the last week since we did the last episode. So we did the last episode, and I decided, I'm going to get my stuff together. I'm going to have to start eating better and exercising and all that type of stuff because I want to be here for you guys forever and ever and ever. So one of the things that I had cut out recently, well, not so recently, but maybe the last 8 months, is that I had stopped drinking. As a matter of fact, December 3rd was the last day. And I want to say I had stopped smoking maybe a month ago. And I could see, I would say, drastic results. It was one of the things about drinking, especially at nighttime, is you make poor eating habits or poor food choices. And so maybe the last 8 months, I could feel myself getting feeling better. I didn't feel groggy and stuff when I woke up in the morning and stuff like that. And while I do miss it, I like the health benefits that it's afforded me more recently. So I decided to go one step further. So while I'm not drinking or smoking, I decided to cut out red meat, all meat, sugar, salt, complex carbohydrates. It's pretty much all the good stuff. So a lot of fruits and vegetables, nuts, grains, and water, because most juices have sugar. Oh my gosh, what is that? High fructose corn syrup, all that bad stuff. We're going to cut all of that out. I don't know how it's going to go, but of course I'm going to let you guys know. I also decided I need to start going back to the gym. Every month I'm paying this gym membership and I don't go. Or I'll go once a week or something like that. So I went with the missus on Saturday, and we hooped it up a little bit. Now, mind you, I'm old, so I don't have time to be out there running full court, all that type of stuff. So me and her will play. We'll play horse or 21, something like that. Now, in my old age, I'm such a gentleman, I decided to let her win all the time because there's no point in arguing. But after we finished hooping, we were going to go lift weights. And so in my mind, I'm still 21, 22. So I try to pick up where I left off. I'm bench pressing 225, and I'm trying to throw 300 on the squat rack. And that was a bad idea. The next day, I couldn't walk. I could walk, but it was at a hobbled pace, to say the least. And it was a tad embarrassing because it's like you have this idea of your physical prowess, and I definitely wasn't that anymore. So I'm gonna have to tone it down a little bit. maybe just do the Nautilus machines before I get back to free weights and all that type of stuff. But I mean, it was fun. It felt good to actually be working out and moving and not just being a couch potato. I mean, it feels good to work out, and I'm sure the wife will appreciate it more than I do. But that is of no consequence. But I'll keep you guys updated. Some pictures and fun stuff, me doing some goofy stuff. Now, I have a question for you guys. The question that I have for you this week is, what is bread and circus? Yes, bread and circus. There was a Roman philosopher by the name of Juvenal, not to be confused with the hot boy, Juvenile. And he had a quote that I'd read, and it was very interesting. It says, "The evil was not in bread and circus per se, but in the willingness of the people to sell their rights as free men for full beliefs and the excitement of the games, which would serve to distract them from the other human hungers with bread and circus could not appease." So, bread and circus. Bread and circus, according to them, was obviously bread is food and circus being entertainment. I asked what bread and circus is because I was in the break room the other day. I don't really comment on too much when I'm in there. I just really listen to what people say. And every day, people always had a comment about what the Warriors were doing, what the Raiders were doing, whatever their particular sport was, or what so-and-so was doing. And one day I asked, like, what do you guys think about measure so-and-so or this political candidate or anything like that? And without pause, all of them said, oh, that's not really important. Someone else will figure that out. And in my mind, I thought, well, these sports don't really affect your life, but politics do. And I think that's what he was saying is people become so fixated with entertainment that they don't care about things that actually matter. And they trade the power that they do have to affect things such as politics by being indifferent. Now, I know you're saying, well, Tru Sav, you said you weren't going to talk about sports, you weren't going to talk about politics, and you definitely weren't going to talk about religion. All of this is true. The reason why I want to speak about them today is to kind of go in depth as to why these things, all three things, there's nothing wrong with them individually or even as a collective. The problem with them is when these things take over your life and you become dedicated to disproving someone else's point, or my team is better than your team, or Republicans are this, or this religious sect is this, that becomes a problem. So, first, we're going to start with the fun one. We'll start with religion. Now, I grew up in the church. I've been to church my entire life. I'm pretty well versed in some sorts of Christianity. I fell out of love. Let me say that better. I love religion for what it is, and that's a guide to kind of try to live your life according to certain morals and standards. I don't like the institution of religion. And what I mean by that is I don't like the pastor, the bishop, the imam, or whatever. I don't like that person standing up there saying, God needs you to give 10%. I don't like them saying they are the judge of your life. I don't like having to go into the little box and tell the guy what you did. The little guy being your priest or whatnot in Catholicism. Like that's a bit sketchy for me. Probably the moment I had a real issue with religion would be when I was old enough to start tithing. Like I was a good Christian. I gave my 10%, so on and so forth. And in, was it February or March of one year, they were handing out W-4s. And I was confused. I was like, well, what is this? They're like, oh, well, all of the money that you tithed, if you claim it, you get this money back. And I was taken aback. I said, wait a minute. What do you mean? And they're like, yeah, it's like when you fill out the envelope and you put your name on it, we keep a record of how much money you give. And if you claim that on your taxes, you get this money back. So I couldn't believe it, because it made me think back to all the times that the pastor would get up there and say, oh, we need a love donation. Oh, we need a building fund donation. Oh, we need this. And someone would get up and, yeah, I'll donate $100, $200. It almost, well, no, it didn't almost. It took away, it made me lose belief in what the whole church thing was about. Because now it became it became almost a show. Like, yeah, I can donate this money and I'll get it back. So it doesn't matter what sum of money that I donate. It just seemed like a fraud. I didn't particularly care for that. Also, when I found out that any church can file for a nonprofit status under 501c, meaning that all of the money that the church keeps is untaxed. So whatever money that they decide to keep for whatever purposes that they decide to use it for, it's untaxed. So it's better than a business, which I'm sure that's not what God in her infinite wisdom wanted people to be doing. But I mean, hey, far be it from me to judge anybody. Now, while I'm not judging, I can tell you from personal experience, I used to, again, like I said, I went to church every Sunday, and my mom and my sister would go. But the one person who never went was my father. And I could never understand. I would always ask, like, Dad, why don't you go? Like, why don't you come to church? This and this and this. You're eternal soul, so on and so forth. And his response would always be, because the pastor's a crook. Pastor's a crook. He's a scumbag. This is this. And I was like, wow, man. Like, he's just a preacher. He's just trying to spread the word. And as I got older, I finally asked, like, can you explain to me what you mean? Like, I hear you talking, but I don't know what you mean. And at the time, my father was doing real estate. And one of the things about real estate is when you apply for a loan or whatever, you need to present all of your financial documents. So tax returns, income. And what he told me was beyond troubling. Now, as a pastor, you don't really have a day job. Some pastors do, some don't. And our particular pastor didn't. He didn't work and his wife didn't work. His entire job was preaching. Now, we lived in a middle-class neighborhood. The pastor had his house built from the ground up. Like, it wasn't a prefabricated home, nothing like that. It wasn't usually builders will have certain models or designs of houses. His was a 100% custom house. Not only was his house custom, but him and his wife had matching Mercedes, which in itself isn't bad. But if you don't have a job and you're preaching the gospel, I mean, Jesus rode up on a donkey. I don't think you need an S-Class. But so that was kind of my introduction to seeing a church as a business. And there was also another preacher in our city. Oh, what was his name? Not Creflo Dollar. It escapes me. But I was like, okay, I'll give another church a chance. So I went to this church. This was on the north side. So everyone in the north went to this church. So I came in, sat down, and the usher approached me. I was like, oh, are you thinking about becoming a member here? And I was like, well, yeah. I like the message. You guys got a lot of people. Like, all right. So when they handed me the form had a W-2 on it. Now, this was strange because I was wondering, why is the church asking me for tax information? And so I asked a member, like, when you joined, did they give you a W-2 also? And they said, yeah, unabashedly. And I was like, well, why? Oh, it's so that the church can make sure that you give your 10%. Yes. The church monitors your income to make sure that you give them the 10%. At that point, I didn't know what to do. I just kind of got up and walked out and haven't really been back since. Now, am I saying that all churches are bad? No. Are all preachers crooked? No. But religion as an institution, I don't agree with. Now, I would be remiss to say there was one church that I absolutely loved. A friend of mine, Phonetics, actually took me. The guy the guy that was the preacher, he worked as a counselor at a high school. The church probably didn't seat more than 100 people. And I was kind of like, oh man, this is going to be another church thing, so-and-so and so-and-so. And when I got there, the guy, I was in shock. First of all, he pulled up in a 96 Toyota Camry. So I was like, that's the preacher right there, that guy? So we go through the lessons, and his lessons weren't, oh, Jesus did this and Jesus needs your 10%. He was actually telling stories that applied to my life. And let me explain. So he was saying that, yes, God can do this and God can do that, but a lot of the responsibility lays on you. Meaning that if you say, you know, God, I need more patience in my life, or I need to be stronger, he's like, then God will put you in those situations. So if you say, I need patience, then that coworker at work that's tripping on you, you're probably going to be put in a situation where you're going to have to use patience. And he put a more human face on it. It wasn't this pie in the sky, magic, or God is a genie. If you rub the lamp and you ask for something, he'll give it to you. He presented it more. He gave better examples that you could use on a day-to-day basis. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, why aren't you more popular? Why don't you have a bigger fold? And the answer that he gave me was that he's not in it for the money. He's more in it to actually help people's life and help them change their life. And I was like, wow, we need more people like you. But unfortunately, we get Joel Osteen's or T.D. Jakes or what's my man, Benny Hinn, stuff like that. And again, it's a case-by-case basis. I can't say all religion is bad, but I think when people get caught up in the dogma of their religions and you want to be on your high horse because you went to church and you wear nice clothes and you gave your 10% and now you feel that it gives you the moral authority to tell people that they're bad or that they're going to hell, that's just out of bounds. And there's no need to really try to debate topics like that with people, because they're just going to go back to God said this or Allah said this, so on and so forth. But, I mean, hey, again, we won't be talking about that here ever again, so you don't got to worry about it. Now, after religion is another topic near and dear to my heart. That would be Poli-TRICKS. Poli-TRICKS. Now, I say that this topic is near to my heart because when I was a child, I wanted to be president. I thought I was going to change the world and end wars and end world hunger and all that type of stuff. And as I became an adult, I began to see that politics were a game of manipulation and backdoor deals and stuff like this, and it boggled the mind. The first thing that comes to mind, since we're in Oakland, would be COINTELPRO. Or, pronounced correctly, COINTELPRO, sorry. COINTELPRO is short for Counterintelligence Program, and this was standard operating procedure in the 50s, 60s, early 70s for the government. And it was a way of swaying political opinion against certain groups, feminist groups, environmentalist groups, anti-war groups, civil rights groups. And it's just another diversionary tactic that's used in politics. Similar to even right now with the current president that we have, and it's swaying public opinion not based on what's right or what's wrong, but based on how they want you to feel about certain things. Now, while that was important and while that happened, I think most importantly, people need to realize that these people that we elect as public officials aren't there to help. They're there to control. Now, what I mean is, when I was in Bakersfield, I had the guy I worked for, nice guy. He voted for Trump, and he would wear his MAGA hats in the office and whatever. It's personal choice. I don't really mind. But he asked me one day who I voted for, and I told him I voted for none of the above. He was like, "Well, what do you mean?" I was like, "Well, I don't really have a dog in this horse, or Jesus Christ, I don't have a dog in this race. Like either way, both of the candidates are scumbags, so I would just rather not." And he's like, "Oh," and he gave me the speech about how voting mattered and this and this. I was like, "Okay, so you voted for Trump, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Well, did he win the popular vote?" He's like, "Well, no." I was like, "Well, why is he the president?" He's like, "Well, the Electoral College voted him in." And I said, "So even if you wouldn't have voted for Trump, he still would have won, right?" And he was like, "Yeah." And it made me think of a line George Carlin had said one time. He said, "Presidents are selected. They're not elected." Again, presidents are selected, not elected. And it made me think, again, of 2000, the year 2000. I had just graduated from high school, and I wasn't old enough to vote yet. The vote was November 2nd or 3rd, and I didn't turn 18 until after that. And I remember waking up, and some of the newspapers in our city said that Al Gore had won. I was like, "Oh, okay, Al Gore won." But then later in the day, they told us that Bush had really won. And of course, everything came out about Florida and the ballots disappearing and so on and so forth. And that was kind of the first time where I really started to believe, like, he's going to be in here regardless of the popular vote, regardless of what the Electoral College says, and what Carlin had started to say became true. And so that event, coupled with what happened recently, made me also start to think about what he said when he said, if voting really worked, they would make it illegal. Because what happened to Bernie Sanders? Now, I couldn't tell you the numbers, but the things that he was talking about seemed to resonate with most of the people in the country. And he seemed to be written off as this third party wackadoo and so on and so forth. And again, it made me think of Ross Perot. Ross Perot ran in 2000. And again, as a child, I didn't know what was going on. But they seemed to, he's a joke. He's not really serious. Their choice is only really between these two candidates. Like that guy, he's not really one of us. It seemed to be the impression that was given. So, again, this is a reason why I don't like politics. I'm not a fan of discussing it because you're forced to pick one side or the other. There never seems to be a middle road. There never seems to be, you can never say, well, okay, I agree with some of the things that Republicans say about being fiscally conservative, stuff like that. I don't agree with their abortion stuff. And then on the other hand, say, I agree with the Democrats when it comes to social programs, stuff like that. There's no middle ground. It's only a conflict. Like you have to pick one side. It's almost like gang warfare. I mean, they have the same colors as the Bloods and Crips. One's red, one's blue. And you have to pick a side. There is no middle ground. It's rather disheartening when you think that this is the state of political affairs in a country. It's no compromise, no real discussion on the subject. It's just my way or the highway. Now, there's one moment that stands out in my mind more than anything. Now, even before then, politics on a national level, there's just no point. For me personally, if that's what you want to do, you want to go out there and rock the vote, God bless you. It's not for me. Now, on a local level, that seems to make a little bit more sense in terms of local measures for schools, roads, stuff like that. Like, I understand that. That makes sense. I don't really have a problem with voting on stuff like that. But as far as who's going to be president, your senator, once you pass a certain level, there's no real hope. Another great movie, Brewster's Millions. Richard Pryor, I think maybe late 80s, early 90s. I'm not going to just tell you what the whole movie is, but in one part of the movie, he's running for, I want to say, governor of the state. And one of my favorite lines that he said in the movie is, "Who spends $1 million trying to get a job that only pays $100,000, unless you plan on stealing it back with interest?" I mean, you have to look no further than Meg Whitman and Jerry Brown in California that spent hundreds of millions of dollars to get a job that pays, what, $250,000? Finally, my last experience with the political system was during the Occupy movement. It was maybe 7-8 years ago when it was Occupy LA and San Francisco and all these different things were popping up. And I was like, yeah, I can get behind that. We're going to make a change. You know what? This is going to be the part where I become the grassroots leader and this and this. If I can't be president, I can do something to change it. So me and Dagwood were out to save the world. So we were out there every day. This was in Sacramento at Cesar Chavez Park was our headquarters. And we were out there and he's leading demonstrations and marches and all that type of stuff. Me, not so much. I just kind of hung back in the shadows. If something happened, we'd talk about it, formulate a plan. He would go out there and he would do his thing. And at one point, we were at a city council meeting and people would come up there and they would yell and, "Oh, you guys are crooks, you're this, you're that," and they would be dismissed. Like, okay. Well, when Dagwood got up there, he started saying some rather poignant things. He started talking about how the city council was accepting money from certain companies, and he named the specific companies. He talked about how the chief of police had been fired from another state for illegally taking money and falsifying police reports and so on and so forth. So this got him an audience with the mayor, who was Kevin Johnson at the time. So he asked me what he should do, and I told him I wouldn't go to that meeting if I was you. I would just, nothing good can come from that meeting. So we disagreed, but he ended up going. And when he came back and we talked about what happened, I asked him, like, well, what happened? He said, so he told him, oh, you know, you're a really passionate speaker and this, and we understand that you have these issues that you'd like to bring forward, but, you know, you're never really going to change the system from outside of it. We think the best thing you should do is join us. We can get you a job here. You can work directly with the mayor. You'll be the go-between from the community to the mayor. And so he thought about it, and he was like, well, you know, I'm going to respectfully decline. I don't feel like I can really help from inside. He said at this point, that's when the mood changed. And they said, oh, okay. Well, I guess it's only fair for us to tell you that if you continue to, you know, come into the city council meetings and talk about this, that, and the other, that we're just going to have to talk about these past drug convictions that you have. Or we can talk about your brother that's in prison. Or we can talk about your other brother who just got out of prison for drug dealing and attempted murder. Or we could talk about this illegitimate child that you have that your wife doesn't know about. And he kind of paused, and he said he'll get back to you. I'll let you know what I decide. And so they said, okay, well, let us know because we'll be watching. And as he's telling me the story, I wanted to tell them, I told you so. Like, they're not here to help. Like, you're never going to win. Like, it's a lose-lose situation for us. So after that, Occupy was quickly disbanded. They remodeled the park, and that was the end of it. But the bigger lesson learned was it's not a game. Like, they're playing for keeps in politics, which is why I don't understand why most people even engage in these types of discussions or arguments. It's not really much to discuss. You're either going to do what they say, or they're going to do something bad to you, whether it be a political assassination or real life assassination. And it's like, yeah, everybody wants to be a martyr until you think about getting shot. So it's, again, another reason why I'm just going to leave politics alone. I like sitting in my house hanging out instead of being on the run. Now, I gotta stop saying now all the time. Anyways, the last thing of the Bread and Circus tour, and probably my least favorite, would have to be sports. Now, this is always something that's kind of bothered me, because this was the first part of my master plan, was to win all these Super Bowls and World Series before I became president. And I believed it. Like, I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I thought that if you work hard and you go to college and you play and you could become a pro and you could do whatever. And that wasn't necessarily true. Now, the first inkling that I got that sports really wasn't what they said it was the 2001-2002 series, NBA playoffs. Now, being a Sacramento Kings fan, this is probably the best thing that we've ever had. Ever, ever, ever. And in 2001 was the first year that Kobe and Shaq were together. Now, we were beating them handily every game. The Lakers were on the ropes. Now, Game 6 of that series is one that they talk about all the time. Or, I'm sorry, Game 5 is the one they talk about. It was 2-2. If the Kings go up 3-2, there's no way the Lakers are coming back. And as a fan, I'm watching, and it seems like the Lakers couldn't commit a foul. They couldn't travel. They couldn't do anything. As a matter of fact, I think if you look at the stats, the Lakers shot 41 free throws in the second half, which is a ridiculous number. So we lost. Obviously, the Kings lost. Lakers go on to win. Shaq and Kobe go on to become what they are. But it wasn't until maybe 2008, 2009 when a referee named Tim Donaghy came out and said that the fix was in, that he was a mobbed-up ref, and that he was not necessarily influencing the outcomes of games, but that there were personal vendettas against certain players, and that the NBA itself would come down and speak to referees and say, this is the way certain games are going to be called. These are the way fouls are going to be called against certain players. Ergo, the Michael Jordan rules. And at first I didn't want to believe it. I was like, no, he's just mad because he was cheating and he got caught. So now he wants to try to ruin it for the rest of us. Now, I did it again. After my football career was over, I started betting on sports. I'd bet on anything. Basketball and baseball. No, I'm sorry. Basketball and football mainly, because those are the two sports that I knew the most about. And that was pretty good. I was good enough that I made more money gambling than I made in my paycheck. It was pretty good. And one of the things that I noticed was that a lot of times when the playoffs came, my view of the games would be off. What I mean is, when you're betting on sports, you're not betting just on who wins and who loses. You're betting on who wins by a specific point margin. And it's called, for those not initiated, it's called a cover. So let's say Oakland plays San Francisco, and Oakland is favored by 7 points. That means that Oakland has to beat San Francisco by 7 points. So if Oakland wins by 6 points, San Francisco would win. It's a difficult concept. I'm not really going to get into it, but those are the basics. So I started noticing that teams that people said weren't good or were never made the playoffs always seem to cover every week. Specifically the Browns. You don't even have to be a football fan to know that the Browns have been terrible for 20 years. But when I would bet, I would always pick the Browns. Because for some reason or another, the Browns would always cover. And there was a few other teams in basketball and in football that would always cover. So I thought it was just a rarity. I thought it was just a coincidence. Well, the more I got into it, the more I started to realize that maybe it's not. I had a friend that played in the NFL. And one of the things that he said was, because I asked him the question, I was like, do you think that this is rigged? Like, do you think that they're intentionally influencing the outcomes of games? And he wouldn't answer directly, but the thing that he did say was that some days the refs just aren't on your side. Which I found was strange because the refs are supposed to be impartial. So if the refs aren't impartial, then how fair could this really be? Another thing that happened that was really interesting was there was a game it was Pittsburgh versus San Diego. Pittsburgh was the favorite. They were the favorite by 3 points. So they had to win by 3. The score of the game was 11-10. Now, the reason why I remember this is because I was in Reno when this happened. I was at the sports book. I was in the gambling place when this happened. And it blew my mind. Again, what was it? Pittsburgh, San Diego. Pittsburgh's favored by 3, so they have to win by 3. And everyone bet on Pittsburgh. So Vegas was going to lose a lot of money if Pittsburgh won. Fourth quarter, maybe less than a minute to go, 30 seconds. Phillip Rivers drops back to pass, fumbles the ball. Troy Polamalu picks it up, runs it in. As time expires, game's over. Pittsburgh wins 17-10. Now, something happened that I had never seen happen before. The game's over. There's no penalties, nothing. The refs get together, have a little huddle. All of a sudden, they say that the fumble wasn't a fumble. It was a forward pass, and that the touchdown doesn't count. Now, the game was over. It didn't matter. It didn't influence a win or a loss. So this was strange. Now, what it did influence was the fact that now people who had a winning ticket in their hand now had a losing ticket. Because instead of Pittsburgh winning by 7, they only won by 1. So this blew my mind. Because as long as I've been playing sports, as long as I've been watching sports, I had never seen anything like this. It was mind-blowing, to say the least. So there's teams that are perpetual losers that are always covering. There's the referee changing the outcome of the game or changing the score of the game after. And then there's an NBA referee admitting that certain games were fixed. I still didn't want to believe. I still thought, no, these are all just coincidences. This couldn't be intentional, not my dear sports. I just didn't want to let it go. So the final straw would have to be when my dearly beloved San Francisco 49ers went to the Super Bowl. Now, before the year started, we got a new coach, and it was John Harbaugh. Now, this is important because his brother is the coach of another team, the Baltimore Ravens. So, of course, before the year started, both teams were good, and there was a lot of hype saying, oh, wouldn't that be cool if both of the brothers played each other in the Super Bowl? I was like, yeah, right. Like, what are the chances? Like, there's just no way. And wouldn't you know it, the 49ers and the Ravens end up in the Super Bowl. The chances of that happening have to be astronomical. That in itself doesn't suggest that things are fixed. But what does kind of bring it to my attention would be we all know what the Super Bowl is. And we all know how hard it is to get there. But I would say, let me give you a little scenario. Let's say you've worked at a company for 16 years. And out of those 16 years, there has been 15 years where one of 3 people got Employee of the Month. So we'll say 1 year Tom got it, then the next year Peyton got it, then Ben got it, and those 3 rotated. 1 year Tom would get it, then Tom would get it again, then Phil would get it, or I'm sorry, Ben would get it. Then there was 1 year where Joe got it, but you know, Joe's the manager's stepson. Now, if I told you that was happening at your job, you would say I was crazy. Well, since 2003 up until 2019, Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, or Peyton Manning has played in the Super Bowl every year. The chances of that happening organically are beyond astronomical. And the 1 year that it wasn't one of those 3, it was Joe Flacco. And the only reason that he made it was because some cornerback fell down and they made a miracle play at the last second. So had Joe Flacco not did it, Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, or Tom Brady would have played in every Super Bowl since 2003. I can't believe that wasn't planned. There's just absolutely no way. It defies logic. It defies reason. Everything. Now, there's a now. In 2007, the Patriots got caught cheating again, and a New York Jet fan decided to sue the NFL because he felt that since the Patriots broke the rules, he was entitled to at least his money back. So the man took him to court. That was Carl J. Mayer, who we were talking about earlier. And the case, if you want to look at this, Carl J. Mayer versus Bill Belichick, the New England Patriots, and the NFL. And his main argument was that the Patriots cheated and that that they were breaking antitrust rules because they're an organization collecting money, so on and so forth. And it was basically fraud. So, in the exact words of the court, they said, Mayer failed to set forth a legally cognizable right, interest, or injury here. At best, he possessed nothing more than a contractual right to a seat from which to watch an NFL game, which was honored. So, it's a fancy way of saying the only thing that you're entitled to if you go to an NFL, NBA game, or an NFL game specifically, is to watch a game. They don't have to play by the rules. They don't have to do anything. So this was kind of troubling because it almost sounds like they're admitting that you can cheat. But then if you can cheat and you can gamble on it, that creates quite a conundrum. But furthermore, they went on to say that, well, first and foremost, the NFL actually has an antitrust exemption that was given to them back in 1962 by John F. Kennedy. I don't know. Well, I mean, his dad liked to gamble, but that's something else. So with this antitrust exemption, it allows the NFL to classify itself as entertainment. Yes, entertainment rather than sport, as well as incorporate itself as a single entity instead of 32 separate franchises. So what that means basically is that, let's say McDonald's, every McDonald's is individually owned and operated, but they're all still part of the same corporation. So there might be McDonald's that sell certain things or don't sell certain things, but at the end of the day, they're all McDonald's. And this is the same thing that the NFL is doing. Even, this is why there's no parity in the NFL. That's why the same teams stay good, because there's no incentive for a team to go out and try to get players or be better, because they have the collective bargaining they have revenue sharing, which means if the Patriots win the Super Bowl and they have the highest selling jerseys, they still make the same amount of money as the Lions or the Browns or whatever other team is at the bottom of the barrel. So if you own an NFL team, you're still winning because you all share the same money. I know. Now, they went on to say, while we call these leagues, quote unquote, sports, they are in fact businesses. Their business is entertainment. Being, quote unquote, entertainment, the leagues are legally entitled to do what is needed to entertain their audience, such as the creation and promotion of certain storylines. The creation and promotion of certain storylines. Maybe Manning versus Brady. Maybe brother versus brother in the Super Bowl. Maybe Tim Tebow is God's quarterback. But I don't think she watches football, but that's another story. They went on to say that the only other sports organization which follows this model is the WWE. For those of you who don't know, the WWE is the World Wrestling Federation. Now, when I usually present this evidence to people, they lose their minds. Oh, are you saying that the NFL is rigged? Yes, actually. I'm 100% saying that. And it's not even me saying it. The NFL argued this point in court in 2010, saying that they provided entertainment, and that all 32 teams, again, are acting as one entity. So there is no competition. There is no, for the glory of the sport. No, it's a business, which is understandable. I'm not upset at them. What I'm upset with is that people dedicate their lives, their finances, to not only being at said sporting events, but gambling on said sporting events. Like there's absolutely nothing wrong if you want to watch a basketball game, a baseball game, whatever. I don't see a problem in it. I think the problem becomes when that takes over your life. When you know more about a football player than you know about your child. There's not only that, but now politics comes into this. See how I did that? You wrap it all together. Yeah. When they need new stadiums, like for example, the Warriors just built a new stadium in San Francisco. They built that stadium in under 2 years. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're going to build a stadium, do it like Jerry Jones did. Put your own money up. Build your own stadium. But that's not what they do. They lobby politicians, local government, and now the city of San Francisco ends up having to raise taxes, even if it's a cent, to build a new stadium. But everyone in San Francisco doesn't watch basketball. I know the Civic Center needs repair. There's a homeless problem. There's a drug epidemic. The average cost of living is $4,000 in San Francisco. I mean, they can't even build a new courthouse or a crime lab, but they have money to build a Warrior Stadium in less than 2 years. The same thing happened in Sacramento. For the longest time, they talked about how bad Arco Arena was and they needed a new stadium, so the team threatened to leave. They said, if you don't build us a new stadium, we're going to leave. They shopped it around a little bit, and once the city saw that they were serious, they decided that they were going to build a new stadium. Again, nothing wrong with the stadium if you're a sports fan. All right. But this shouldn't be coming out of taxpayer dollars. That's just unacceptable. Furthermore, even going to one of these games is a recipe for disaster. I've been to Arco Arena. I couldn't tell you how many times, more than 100, and I can't tell you how many people I've seen stumbling out of the exits. As a matter of fact, a story I don't believe I was there when this happened, but one story that I'll never forget was there was a guy that you had. Our team was terrible. Our team was so bad that we had dollar beer nights. So we had 2 nationally televised games, and to make our team not seem like trash, they had dollar beer nights. And a guy sitting in the crowd had one too many, and he was unmercifully heckling a guy in another section. Now, this went on for the entire game. They go out into the parking lot, and actually, he wasn't heckling the specific guy that he had an incident with. He was just heckling people throughout the day. So he leaves, goes into the parking lot. He's driving, of course. He cuts off another driver. Now, the driver of the car was what is he, 6'3", 280-pound Samoan gentleman. Now, that's important to the story for later. The guy gets out, starts flapping his jaws, blah, 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 blah. The guy punches him. One punch knocks him out. The guy dies. So there was and the thing was, so they're saying, oh, well, you got to arrest the guy. He killed him, so on and so forth. So they go back into the arena and they say, like, well, what happened? And the guy was being an ass, goes outside, dude punches him and kills him. Now, I'm not saying that dude should have died. I'm not saying anything like that. But these are the types of things that happen at sporting events. I'm not here to judge to say whether or not you shouldn't be drinking or you shouldn't do anything like that. But it's a constant. Let's see. Dodgers, Giants. Maybe 5-6 years ago. Guy goes to the baseball game with his family, gets into an argument in the parking lot, gets stabbed to death. I was at Candlestick Park before they took it down. First football game I'd ever been to. And I wanted it to be the last. Tickets already, and the team was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. We're in the parking lot, pre-gaming, having a drink or two. We meet up with another group of 49ers fans. We're having a good time. They seem like decent people. We're hanging out, drinking, whatever. A group of Jacksonville Jaguar fans are walking through the parking lot. When I tell you that these nice people we were hanging out with turned into animals. They formed a line. We're in the parking lot. There's rows of cars, and in between the rows of cars, obviously, are where cars drive. They're walking through the Jags fans are walking through the parking lot. The people that we were just with join hands. There's maybe 15 of them. Join hands, kind of like Red Rover, and block their way. And tell them, if any of you walk and touch our hands, we are going to assault you. Now, these weren't young people that were Jaguars. These were people's mothers, grandmothers, small children. There might have been some 20, 30-year-old men in the group. But when I tell you they started swearing at these old women and old men and children, I mean, everything you can think of. You SOB, you MF, we're going to do this, that, and the other. And one of the ladies said, like, we're not Jaguars fans. My son went to school with Maurice Jones-Drew. We're only here to support him, and he's from the Bay Area. We don't care if you come over here. We're going to this, that, and the other. And it was just like, wow. You have no affiliation with this team. They don't care that you're here. But you're willing to assault somebody over something that it boggled the mind. So again, if sports are your thing, God bless you. But when it becomes threats of physical violence or this is what your life revolves around, and you're subject to emotional swings. Just like when you see these videos of people destroying their house or destroying TVs because a football team lost. I just don't understand. It boggles the mind. I don't know. I just live here. All right. Well, the first question I asked was, what is bread and circus? And like I said, bread and circus is a distraction from the things that really matter. Again, the three things that we just talked about, religion, politics, and sports, are usually the three main things that the people in control try to use to distract us from the things that we really should pay attention to. That being your family, your health, your own life. Like when you're concerned, I feel like sometimes you don't live your life the way it's supposed to be lived when you're steady worrying about what the president's doing or what the people over in that church are doing or what the Raiders are doing. Again, if that's what you want to do, God bless you. But it's not for me. It's not what we're going to talk about here. This is all the talking about it we're going to do. So, finally, I'll leave you with another quote from my man, Juvenal. Now that no one buys our votes, the public has long since cast off its cares. The people that once bestowed command, consulships, legions, and all else, now meddles no more and longs eagerly for just two things, bread and circus. So what he means is, or what I'm assuming that he means is that at one time people actually were concerned with politics. They wanted their communities to be better. They wanted a better life. And now they just seem worn down and become distracted. And the only thing that matters to them is where they're going to get their next cheap meal and where they're going to get their next form of entertainment. I would like to say it's not true, but I mean, Keeping Up with the Kardashians is in its 17th season. What is entertaining about that? Well, that's not my business. But that's another story for another day. Give them bread and circuses, and they will never revolt. That's truest statement's never been said. As long as you have your cable and your dollar menus, they're not going to revolt. All right. Woo. I thought we were done being sad. I thought we were going to do some fun stuff. Well, I'm going to go to the gym, guys. I will post some pics of my new diet and all the new water that I'm going to get, because I don't know what I'm going to do without juice. Like, you can't even get juice. There's too much sugar in juice. I don't know. If I said anything wrong, if I misquoted something, please let me know. Hit me at bestdayeverpodcast@gmail.com. Tell me where I was wrong. Don't forget to follow me, Tru Sav Comedy, at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's see. Do I got anything else? Oh, Tommy T's in Pleasanton. Open mic night. We're going to see what's going on. Because, I mean, while I enjoy talking to you guys, I'm going to get on the stage and tell some jokes. We're going to see how that works out, and I'll let you guys know. Remember, I can't get yesterday back, and I might not get tomorrow, so let's make today the best day ever. All right, peace.